What's up, you amazing people? I hope you're having a fantastic day. You are, of course, watching and listening to the Daily Dirty 30, also known as the DDT, here on The Kevin Lee Show. And I'm your host, Kevin Lee. Now, for those of you who do not know what the DDT is all about, let me take a moment to explain. You see, it's a show that airs live at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday, and it's where I get to spend 30 minutes telling you, the viewer, all about the things that bother me today. What do I get out of it? That's easy. It's therapeutic. Why should you tune in? That's even easier. It's entertaining. Sound like a fair trade? Good. Let's get to it. Sorry about that. Hello, friends. I'm glad you're here. I hope everyone is having a happy Thursday. That is, at least, for those of you who are watching or listening to us live. And for everyone else who might be seeing this later on, I hope you're having a happy day too, wherever and whenever that might be. Now, I'm sure by this point in your life, you know exactly who I am and where you're at. But if not, for some strange reason, my name is Kevin, and of course, you are watching the Daily Dirty 30 here on The Kevin Lee Show, a show that airs Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to 7 p.m. And as the name might suggest, it is a 30-minute long show where I talk about things that just kind of got me riled up that day. And, well, to be honest, we're going to get right to it. Today, we're going to be discussing a topic that caught my attention yesterday, during the broadcast, actually. And that would be the topic of reparations. What might you ask? What about reparations? Well, we're not going to talk about them in great detail or about them in general of every sense of the word or how they mean for, slavery reparations necessarily, but we're going to be talking about how Kamala Harris views them. And the reason being is that we were going through yesterday talking about her views on different issues. I found a list and it had the candidates from 2020, I should say the Democratic candidates from 2020. And when you go through there, it would kind of list what their views were on the economy, jails, that sort of thing. And reparations did come up on that list. In fact, I'm going to pull it up right now. So this is, pardon me, I should probably get that off. This is going to be actually what it says. So this is what it said on her list for Kamala Harris's views on reparations. And it simply just said, study reparations. Well, I thought that was a good idea. I think we should all study reparations. But that obviously does not say very much as to what people actually think or what she actually thinks about reparations. And in fact, because she is now she is now center stage as the official vice presidential candidate or running mate, if you will, for Joe Biden or potential future president. It's kind of important what she thinks about these major topics. And reparations was one where it seemed very vague. It says study reparations. Well, okay, so we're going to study reparations a little bit. To do that, though, we are actually going to have to first define what reparations is. It's a hard word to say, reparations. And that would be right here. So you can find reparations, the definition right here. If you just go straight onto any internet search you do, this happen to be Google, you just go on there and you type in define reparation. This is what comes up. It says the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. So as you can see, it's a very generic term. Reparations can be applied to most anything. Whenever someone's done something wrong, you pay them back essentially for when someone's wronged you, they pay you back for what they've done. It's almost like restitution, where like someone breaks something of yours or steals something for yours, they would pay it back, just as a general rule. But reparations, in this dialogue, they're actually talking about slavery reparations, which makes everything obviously a little bit more difficult to define as well as wrestle with, because we're talking about paying reparations to descendants of those who were wrongly enslaved hundreds of years ago or 100+ years ago. So that actually, I think for most people, that kind of gives people hesitation when it comes to talking about and speaking about reparations, because frankly, let's face it, people don't feel necessarily comfortable either talking about it, and if they do, they don't necessarily know what to say because they don't want to seem like they're insensitive. But at the same time, it's like, okay, me being alive today, was I in any way, shape, or form involved with slavery? No. Were my parents? No. Were my grandparents? No. And anyone live today, born in, the last 20, 30, 40 years, were they slaves? No. Were their parents slaves? No. Were their grandparents slaves? No. So that's what I think the area everyone kind of gets not confused about, but just kind of uncomfortable with is the fact that we're talking about paying reparations for to people for things that were never directly done to them. Now, there are some arguments, and we'll talk about a little bit later. Some people will say, well, it's not the actual act of the slavery itself. It's the fallout from it, from generation after generation, and the systemic racism that's come about because of it. Now, I think, to me, in my opinion, that's a little bit different. If you want to talk about racism, not racism, that's one thing. But slavery and racism are not necessarily the same thing. And even though I know they seem like they're connected, they're not at all, frankly. And I say this because it's true, first off. But second off, it's not just my opinion. I mean, yes, they seem like they're the same topic because oftentimes they are involving Black people or people of color, and people of color or Black people were generally the ones who were enslaved, at least in America. So I understand why you could conflate the two, but they're not necessarily, and they're not actually at all tied together. Racism is something that is, well, that's a whole different conversation. Let's not dive deep into, let's not do a deep dive into racism tonight because, again, we only have 30 minutes for this show, and frankly, we are actually about almost a third of the way through. So we should not be wasting time talking about topics that are not going to be a good thing for this. So we now define reparations, right? The generalization, again, the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. And on paper, reparations sounds like it's potentially a good thing. That being said, that's not always the case, right? Right. So now we're going to jump into something where we're going to talk more about Kamala Harris because, again, we're talking about the candidate for vice president and president. I can't help myself but saying that Kamala Harris believes about reparations. So, again, we saw that Politico had put on there that she was believing that this was something worth studying. Okay, great. But that doesn't say a whole heck of a lot. Because reparations can mean anything from, we're going to, do certain things to help lift up, the Black community versus everything from giving them checks for hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? There's a great variety and variables in between those two. So now we're actually going to talk about, let's pull it up right here. So this was actually posted by The Guardian. And here they're talking again. These are all about the candidates from the 2020 election, like Kamala Harris and everyone else who was involved. And on here, it's Democrats and slavery reparations. Where do 2020 candidates stand? And of course, she's like front and center. It says Kamala Harris, California senator, position non-committal, which I think is a very interesting statement. She already said it needs to be studied here. She's non-committal. It says what she has said. And I quote, I think that the term reparations, it means different things to different people. But what I mean by it is that we need to study the effects of generations of discrimination and institutional racism and determine what can be done in terms of intervention to correct course. Again, on paper, I think that's a fine thing for her to say as a politician and for her own take on it. Again, I don't believe institutional racism and discrimination actually tie hand in hand with reparations personally, but again, we can have a conversation another day. Oops, my notepad disappeared. So this is, apparently what she believes. But again, it doesn't really give us any detail as to what her thoughts are. And a quote can simply be formulated, or maybe it was even a quote sent in by her people, who knows? But here, there's actually audio. We can listen to her talk about exactly the things that she believes, reparations are about. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up some audio that I have here. Some handy dandy audio. It's only about 2 minutes long. It's a sampling. It's just a snippet of a part of an interview that she did with NPR. And it's just basically her being asked a question and her speaking directly to her thoughts and beliefs on reparations. Again, is it the best answer or a complete answer? No, it's not. But this is the reaction she had when she was asked about it. So I suggest we listen. Okay.
Candidates is floating an idea. It's a way to pay reparations for slavery and racial discrimination. Several candidates have endorsed that notion, although they're rarely giving specifics. Senator Kamala Harris also says the matter needs study, but in a talk with NPR, she did suggest what's on her mind. Can you give me an idea of one possible form this could take?
Sure. You can look at the issue of untreated and undiagnosed trauma. African Americans have higher rates of heart disease and high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It is environmental. It is centuries of slavery, which was a form of violence where women were raped, where children were taken from their parents. Violence associated with slavery.
Okay. Am I the only one confused by what she had to say there? In that whole beginning section, she talked about high blood pressure and is directly related to slavery. Did I miss something? Should we go back and listen to that right quick? I think we will. It's only about 40 seconds. Oopsies. Come on. Rewind. Okay, we're going to listen to the beginning of that again and make sure I didn't miss something.
One of the Democratic presidential candidates is floating an idea. It's a way to pay reparations for slavery and racial discrimination. Several candidates have endorsed that notion, although they're rarely giving specifics. Senator Kamala Harris also says the matter needs study, but in a talk with NPR, she did suggest what's on her mind. Can you give me an idea of one possible form this could take?
Sure. You can look at the issue of untreated and undiagnosed trauma. African Americans have higher rates of heart disease and high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It is environmental. It is centuries of slavery.
Okay, so apparently I did not miss anything. So she is trying to tie in the trauma of being slaves back 150, 200 years ago to people having high blood pressure and what have you. Okay, very good. Just want to make sure I didn't miss something there. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. I think we are. Right? All right, carry on.
Which was a form of violence where women were raped, where children were taken from their parents. Violence associated with slavery. And there was never any real intervention to break up what had been generations of people experiencing the highest forms of trauma. And trauma undiagnosed and untreated leads to physiological outcomes.
We're talking about the same thing as post-traumatic stress from a war. That's the kind of thing we're
absolutely.
Okay, I'll carry on.
But listen, unless there's intervention done, it will appear to be perhaps generational, but it's generational only because the environment has not experienced a significant enough change to reverse the symptoms. You need to put resources and direct resources, extra resources, into those communities that have experienced that trauma. So that's an example.
Reparations
in my
could be
mind,
mental health treatment for
I think
African Americans.
reparations. Yeah, I think that the term reparations, it means different things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
But what I mean by it is that we need to study the effects of generations of discrimination and institutional racism and determine what can be done in terms of intervention to correct course.
Okay, there you go. Once again, she's tying in the fact that she believes that racism is tied directly in to slavery. And again, I'm not saying that you couldn't make any connections there. I just don't think the two are directly connected. But then she's also saying that intervention. Okay, she keeps throwing on this term intervention. That's actually got me thinking. I was going to actually talk about this later, but I think I'm going to talk about it now because it makes more sense to talk about it now. Intervention. So intervention like stepping in, trying to maybe give people in the Black community extra help, right? Is this what we're talking about by intervention? Maybe by, creating a program or organizations where, making it an easier path for them, maybe to get a higher education, to get into college, or maybe to make sure that they're able to get jobs or at least interviewed for certain jobs, even if maybe they're not qualified, like that sort of thing. Just kind of make sure they have kind of get a leg up. Is that kind of what this intervention is you're talking about, Ms. Harris? Is it Ms. Harris? It must be Ms. Harris because she's married. She doesn't take her husband's name. So she'll go with Ms. Harris. Interesting. Okay, so you're talking about affirmative action. We've been trying that for quite some time. I'm old enough to know the positive and negative effects of affirmative action. I've known people who benefited from it, and I've known people who were punished by it. I'm not a big fan of affirmative action, to be honest with you. And if that's what you're talking about, then no. No, don't want any more of that. No, sir, do not. If it's something else, I'd be willing to at least hear you out. But apparently answering a question for most politicians is, well, impossible. So I guess we're not going to be finding out exactly what Kamala Harris believes about reparations. I believe she is wanting to say just enough to get the juices flowing of people who might follow her, but not enough so people have ammo to throw against her, which is a smart move as a politician. So kudos to her for actually taking the, not the high road in any stretch of the imagination, but definitely the smart road. That's good. That was actually a very good answer for her. I mean, it's terrible for us, but it's good for her. Now we're going to change speeds up here just a wee bit. Yeah, we're going to just change things up just a wee bit. And that's because, well, let's see. Okay, so now we're going to do this. So, oh, no. Oh, here we go. Thought something locked up on me. I'm like, no. Okay, what we're going to talk about now is something we kind of touched base just a touch yesterday. I mentioned it, but I didn't show you anything. And that was we're going to talk a little bit more about Kamala Harris's father. Now, again, her father is Jamaican, from Jamaica. And her mother is Indian from India. So her father is a very proud Jamaican. And he is, well, we'll get into, well, yeah, okay, we can mark that right now. So Donald Harris is his name. He is a Jamaican-American economist and professor emeritus at Stanford University, known for, I can never say this word, for applying post-Keynesian ideas to development economics. We're not going to get into that right now. We definitely don't have time to talk about that. But again, he was born in Jamaica. He is an American. He has two children, Kamala and Maya, or Kamala. See, I'm going to get her name right eventually. Kamala and Maya. He was married to his wife, who is now passed away, but they divorced many years ago, apparently back in 1971. So a long time ago. But yes, this is her father, Donald. Now, Donald Harris, again, he is a scholar, and he has written for, alrighty, I have it here, don't I? Should have it. Okay, I think it's on right now. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up. So this is actually the article that references what he had to say about their ancestry in Jamaica. This is actually in Jamaica Global. It's a publication, apparently a very popular one in Jamaica. And the sad thing is, I was actually having a little trouble finding this. I had seen a bunch about it the last day or so, and but didn't have much chance to look into it. By the time I tried to look into it today, it seemed like it was trying to be blocked by many sources, and I don't know why. Almost like they were trying to remove it. Very strange indeed. Poor behavior. And again, this isn't bad in this. I mean, maybe some people might say thinks it looks bad. Maybe that's why they're trying to pull it down. I do not know, but maybe you want to have a chance to go take a peek at this. Maybe you'll find it interesting. And again, there's a whole article here, and it talks in great detail about her family, her ancestry. And there's an interesting letter here, and I'm gonna have a snippet for you, but it says "Reflections of a Jamaican Father" by Donald J. Harris, which is kind of funny because Donald J. Trump, Donald J. Harris. I don't know, maybe it's just me. All right, so this is her father, and he wrote this letter and includes in pictures of people of his relatives and his grandmother and all these people. And again, I welcome you to come read it. It's on it's called JamaicaGlobalOnline.com, and if you just look up her Kamala Harris Jamaican heritage. You'll find it. But what we're actually going to talk about right now is going to be this. It's going to be the beginning of that letter that was inside the article. It says Reflections of a Jamaican Father. Now, we don't have time for me to even read the whole thing, but we're going to jump down to just the second paragraph. This is the second paragraph in, right? It says, my roots go back within my lifetime to my paternal grandmother, Miss Crishy, and that's how it is, Crishy. It's Crishy. So Crishy, with a maiden name of Christina Brown, descendant of Hamilton Brown, who is on record as plantation and slave owner and founder of Brownstown. And it goes on to talk about his maternal side. Okay, I'm going to read that to you again. It says, my roots, this is Kamala Harris's father, Donald J. Harris, Jamaican. Okay, it says, my roots go back within my lifetime to my paternal grandmother, Miss Crishy, Christina Brown, descendant of Hamilton Brown, who is on record as plantation and slave owner and founder of Brownstown. Okay, so I kind of touched base just very, very briefly yesterday about this and who this person is, who this Hamilton Brown is. He's actually an Irishman, meaning a very white man, who had moved to Jamaica, was actually born in 1776, moved to Jamaica, lived there, got into business, became a politician. I think he was in the assembly for 22 years, if I remember correctly. So he was involved in politics. He was a slave owner. Some say even a slave trader. He owned a plantation. He was a sugar planter, but he had a plantation in Jamaica. And that's not saying he's a good person or a bad person. I don't know. None of us are going to know. None of us are around. Even if there was things written about someone, it's only someone's opinion of him. But he and Donald J. Harris, who is Kamala Harris's father, is more than willing to admit that this is who he's related to. He's a descendant of this white Irishman named Hamilton Brown. So inside their own lineage, they're direct descendants of a slave owner in Jamaica, which is interesting. Again, it's not a bad thing. It's nothing against Kamala Harris because she can't control who she's related to. And I think that's why her father was willing to talk about it, because why be embarrassed of your past? I'm sure I've got people in my past who I wouldn't necessarily be running out telling everyone about. But at the same time, if I'm talking about my history, I'm sure I'd be willing to talk about them because that's them and I'm me. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of where we're at. So basically, she has a lineage of at least one slave owner in her family on her Jamaican side, on her paternal side. Which is and actually it's even interesting too because okay, I'm going to reread the last part again. So that his grandmother is the descendant of Hamilton Brown, who is on record as plantation and slave owner and co-founder of Brownstown, and to my maternal grandmother, Miss Iris Finnegan, farmer and educator from Aontown and Inverness ancestry unknown to me. So he has an Irish grandfather on the one side, and on his maternal side, he's got another Irish person. So there's a lot of Irish. Again, like I was saying yesterday, there were 6 cultures known to be in Jamaica. African being probably the most populous, but soon after that was Irish. It was British and then Irish. I had no idea, but now we all know. A lot of Irish people in Jamaica, apparently. So moving forward again, we're running out of time. Excuse me, hold on. A little bit of tea. Okay, so now we're there. And actually, really, we've kind of gone over most of what we need to go over with today. We didn't learn a whole lot, but what we did learn is that she's crafty. She knows how to answer the question properly when put to her, because obviously in her mind, she has an idea of reparations. Now, I know some people will try to sell Kamala Harris as being right down the road, almost centrist or slightly left, moderate, if you will. And that's not the case. She said many things that say different. In fact, I don't want to pull it up right now, but there is a simple interview she did where she was, well, it's not an interview. She was on a town hall during this election cycle. So it wasn't a long time ago. She was being asked a question by someone in the audience about climate change and all that kind of stuff. And tied into there was a question about, should we be consuming less beef? And to paraphrase, she literally went on about as much as she loves cheeseburgers once in a while, more or less, that we need to start, telling people what they should and shouldn't eat. Now, how far we should be willing to go with the telling people part, I have no idea. But you seem pretty adamant about it. And because of that, it's something that we should all be slightly concerned with, if nothing else. Another thing I wanted to kind of touch base on and kind of close this out with was, remember back on Monday, we talked about there have been I made up a word again, looting and riots. Or riots and looting is rooting. I think I'm going to go with it. I'm going to trademark it. Rooting. So there was rooting in Chicago Sunday night. Well, really Monday morning from like midnight to like 6:30 a.m. And there was a lot of stores, and it was in a very trendy, upscale part of Chicago, the Michigan Mile. I'm sure you've heard of it. Streeterville, just a really fancy area. Rich people, rich shops. I mean, Gucci stores, Apple stores, Tesla is there. Upscale. So people had gone in, rioters had gone in because under a false premise of believing that a young boy had been killed by police the day before, when he hadn't. A, it wasn't a young boy, it was a man, and B, he was never killed. And again, we'll find out the fallout from that investigation, hopefully eventually, but as of now, the official story is that the guy had a gun, he was questioned about it, he ran, allegedly turned back to fire at the police officers at some point, and the police officers opened fire. They hit him. He survived. He's in the hospital. Stable, last I heard. So I'm assuming he'll have his day in court. So that was that. But then again, because of this issue, there was rioting, or they went all over social media and said, we're going to have these riots, we're going to have these looting, we're going to take it to the city, we're going to take it to the North Shore, we're going to take it to the rich people, and we're going to take back our city and do what we want, or whatever. So they did. They did, and they were rioting and looting, and they broke into stores and they stole things. And normally, that just, I don't want to say it's run of the mill, but it kind of is. But the thing is not only why they did it, but afterwards the fallout. So I'm sure you've heard plenty of back and forth going about Black Lives Matter, and not so much about the movement or the sentiment, but the organization, right? A lot of people say, oh, they're not so bad. A lot of people are like, no, they're terrible. Have no problem with the movement, have no problem with people standing up for black people, the sentiment behind it, but not the organization, right? And then you'll point out something like, oh, the Black Lives Matter. If you go on their official website, where you actually donate to, these seem like Marxists. In fact, the people who started this say they're Marxist. They use terms like comrade and say we need to end the nuclear family, all these things, right? And then you'll have other people say, well, no. Black Lives Matter, the organization isn't all bad. That's just, they have all these different chapters all over the place, and they're completely independent. Okay, fine. So fine. But I agree that could be a possibility, especially in, different parts of the country. Well, Chicago is a very large area, right? It's a very populous area. And the head of the Black Lives Matter organization in Chicago was speaking out about the looting and the riots. I don't know, it was on Monday or Tuesday, but it was afterwards, kind of talking about the fallout at a press conference. There was like this rally, there was this march or whatever, and she was there to talk about it. And I want to just play a snippet real quick. It's only like a minute long, maybe not even, and 22 seconds long, okay? But you have to really listen and watch to this, because it's frightening, is what it is. But I'm going to play it right now.
Care if somebody decides to loot a Gucci or a Macy's or a Nike, because that makes sure that that person eats. That makes sure that that person has clothes. That's reparations. That is reparations. Anything they want to take it, because these businesses have insurance. They're going to get their money back. My people aren't getting anything.
Okay, so you heard it. This is a person from Chicago who is in Black Lives Matter organization, who's an official person in the Chicago chapter of Black Lives Matter, and she's saying that this is reparations to her. Take what you want. It's ours. Just take it. We deserve it. It's kind of crazy if you ask me. It's kind of sad if you ask me. But if you ask me, we're at 30 minutes already, so I can't even tell you. We got to go. So, all right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. And just remember, today is Thursday, which means tomorrow's Friday, the last day of the show, the last show of the week, at least of the Daily Dirty 30, and that is before Saturday, where we have the Libertarian Hour. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, or wonderful night, or wonderful whatever, wherever you might be. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye.